Red light, tell again.
Yep, we are golden.
You're hot. Alright, Chuck, what is your question?
I need to get John's attention.
I'm ready.
John, hurry up.
Gentlemen, when you were talking about this, I wasn't clear on where we were in the process exactly. Do we have the mitigated negative deck, or is that what the environmental review will get us?
That's what the environmental review will get us. And the City of Menlo Park is planning on submitting their proposal to award a contract to a consultant at the end of this month or the first week in May.
And
So
how much is the environmental review costing?
it matters which consultant they choose.
I know, but roughly.
Roughly, we're looking at 60 to 100,000.
And the result of this actually could be, at the end of this environmental review, we could possibly not get the negative DAC, which would mean we'd still then have to go through a complete EIR.
Correct, however, that's unlikely. Most likely what the results will be is that they will make determinations that we need to follow certain policies or procedures that they already have in place in regards to construction noise and testing of generators and whatnot.
So let me just understand the process, because I want to talk to some people there. As far as you know, the city council itself did not vote to have this environmental review. That's something that's being done by the planners or by the city manager.
The planning department has the authority to make the determination whether or not a project needs to go through a process.
Okay. Okay, that's what I wanted. So as far as you know, really the city council members aren't aware of any of these details.
That would be my assumption.
Yeah, no, they're not aware of it.
Okay.
Soon.
They're aware of a process issue, as was stated.
Right.
But people are upset that things don't move more quickly.
Let me ask one more question about it, as far as you know. They already sent, to make this determination of the environmental review, did they send their notice out to neighbors about our plan being submitted?
No, not yet. What we did is they solicited for using an RFP to get consultants on board to do the project, but no, nothing has been sent out to the.
So as far as you know, is there any resident opposition to the plan at this point?
No.
So this is all internally generated by the planning department?
Correct.
And Director Ianson and I have been out there on 2 separate occasions, all the way down the street, to let people know, the residents know, what was going to happen with the fire station, and ask them for comment.
It's been so
And I've been
long
out
ago,
there
they think
twice
they're
as
not gonna
well.
build it.
Yeah, that's right, you did it again while I was gone, so, I mean, it's,
Okay, so I just was wondering who
There's
was,
no
who
surprise
was the
that there's-
source of the problem?
yeah, there's not going to be a surprise that we're building a new fire station, because everybody's been notified that that's going to happen.
Okay, thank you, that's,
See, and zoning changes take place all the time before people have the slightest idea what you're gonna build. That's why I don't understand. I think they're playing a real game with us here. They could rezone this thing PF tomorrow if they wanted to. Okay, we ready for item 20 here? Oh,
We didn't make any motion or.
Motion.
Yeah, I think you got to,
No, it just says- there's no motion.
No motion.
no direction.
And there's no motion.
We know what we need to do, we'll take care of it.
Item 20.
So,
I believe that's Susan.
That is. If you've all had an opportunity to read the report, I don't plan on a lengthy discussion. I'm available to answer questions. I just wanted you all to have, before I left here, my observations about your budgeting system and sort of financial reports, and make a few recommendations.
I'm always interested if you continue to speak in the third person about us rather than we. You're this and you're that, rather than you taking any ownership of it.
Well, Director, during this meeting, she's run out of hours, so really she's run out of hours. There's not a lot of even work here anymore.
we have a solution for that.
She told me she had 9 minutes. Did we get that on tape? She said she had 9 minutes left.
Thank you.
would you like to make public comment?
So moved, Mr. President.
Well, actually, that's the next thing here. I mean, you could do that. It's probably comment number 3.
I would happily answer any questions. I I've laid out a series of recommendations, all of which I think are needed. I don't believe this can be implemented in time for the 2014-15 budget, but, you know, I think I responded to Director Bernstein that it would take a yeoman's effort to do, if you wanted to go that route. But anyway, I'd be happy to answer your questions.
So Susan, thanks for, oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Thanks for doing this. It was a great report. And I actually agree with a lot of the recommendations. But I just wanted to, I don't know if I want to do a lot of this right now because I know that Steve Notchtime, who's also on the Finance Committee, had some concerns as well. So I'm just wondering if this could go back to what y'all think about having this go to a May Finance Committee meeting, just to include Steve's comments. Because I think some of them were pretty legitimate. I mean, I can read some of his comments in the email. I think, Peter, you probably got this too. But, and I actually agree with some of his comments that there's a lot of transitioning that's happening, including getting a new administrative services manager. You know, do we want that person's input? Let's see, I think we're waiting to do a deputy chief hire. So I don't know, I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, I just would rather bring it back next month unless people think it's an urgent situation now. Because I agree, it's gonna be tough to implement for immediately.
Yeah, I think that we've had a wonderful opportunity of having Susan to be with us and sort of take this fresh perspective on this. And picking up on the discussion we had at the recent study session, I think that the direction that we should move in is that during the forthcoming fiscal year, that a significant effort be undertaken to adopt a new chart of accounts for the district, which incorporates these plus, I don't think we should be doing this piecemeal. I think we should just say, okay, not this coming year, but the year after that, we're going to have a new chart of accounts. Up to and including going out to a contractor and saying, okay, we want you to work with our new administrative person. And I mean, there's got to be some people out there who are really good at doing this kind of thing. You know, who can come in and look at our current chart of accounts and say, okay, here's a new chart of accounts, and this is the way to get from here to here. And then during the course of the next year, those issues will come to us, and when we adopt the budget for the next fiscal year, it will be with the new chart of accounts. And I sent to most of you a report from the state of New York. Much to my amazement, the state comptroller has designed a chart of accounts for fire agencies. And it's beautiful, because it gets rid of all the stuff that comes with the city or a town or something else and says, this is the way, and in the state of New York, it's mandated that every independent fire agency use those chart of accounts. So we don't have to pay anybody anything. I mean, that's at least, I think, a very good starting point. There may be some special characteristics because it may, I looked at the USTAR issue, they got line items in there for federal, et cetera, so I think it's a good way to go. But the message I would say is, you're absolutely right about the changes you recommend, but you also were quite clear in the study session that the whole way we do our charts of accounts is crazy. And rather than try to patch it, I would say what we should do is replace it.
But I think that also needs more discussion than what we can accomplish here tonight.
Well, we're saying direction to staff. And so my request should be, the staff should come back to us and say, do we patch it or do we replace it? Because these are really good patches,
Yeah.
but doesn't solve all of the issues that Susan has made us aware of.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's necessarily a staff thing, whether they decide. Are you saying they should decide?
No, I'm saying, what is their recommendation? We'll ask the staff for a recommendation. You've got this one of the issues before us is, do we try to do something for the next budget year? I think that that's not feasible, that we're not gonna have the resources to make any significant changes between now and the time we have to approve the next budget.
Yeah, because there are lots of changes.
But I also think it's a mistake to try to make piecemeal changes.
Okay, so then do you think that we should have, if we ask for a recommendation do you think that's possible that we could have that at the May 12th Finance Committee meeting at that point, and then include the third member of the Finance Committee in that discussion, and include him in that discussion?
I want to weigh in here because we have an administrative services manager who's scheduled to start her position on Monday.
Okay.
I don't believe that is a sufficient amount of time for you to get the level of recommendation that you're seeking from that individual.
You mean from May, or for the next Finance Committee?
Right, you're asking for
Yeah,
something May
yeah.
12th and the individual starts on April 21st.
Okay, that's a very short amount of time.
If we're gonna
It
do it
is.
the year after, we don't need to do it tonight.
Right.
She is familiar with it. She was supposed to be here tonight. Unfortunately, she is ill and was unable to attend our meeting tonight. But I do feel like, given the discussion, I would ask that the board maybe wait until we have that person on board. I can speak with some confidence that she has a great deal of experience with these processes as a former assistant city manager herself. So take comfort at least in knowing that you're going to get somebody who can hit the ground running and made some of the same observations that Susan made during the course of the interview process. So I would just ask that maybe you let her sort of get acclimated, and then we can maybe reignite this discussion. So
No,
just
I think that's a
knowing
great
that.
idea. I just don't want to rush, and I certainly want this person's input.
And that was obviously Director Carpenter's proposal.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not asking for a lot of time, but we need some time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't want to have to vote on this tonight, that's for sure.
Yeah, I kind of gathered that, so.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to this, and I know maybe Susan has passed this up, but I'm going to pass around something I had on this. I don't disagree with the comments Jenny just made, and I think that is the right way to go. But I think this is, I have a couple of things to say, and actually have some expertise in this from having been a budget consultant and so forth. One of the problems, and by the way, Peter, I feel like it's mischaracterizing it to talk about it as a chart of accounts issue. I don't think the chart of accounts is really an issue at all here. Yes, in a minor technical way. I think the problem is this fund accounting that's going on, where we're doing all this different accounting by different funds. And all the funds really are different pigeonholes where we've stuck bits and pieces of money. And the reason I think we've done it is this thought that maybe if we hid the money, the employees wouldn't know how much we really had. I don't know that that's true, but I kind of have the feeling.
It's not.
It's not what?
No.
That, I don't know why we have all these different funds. It's insane to have them all. And I'm recommending, I mean, I'd like to suggest, I'm agreeing with what Susan has proposed. I think we are spending so much money doing this the wrong way. These reports we get, first of all, a financial report should never be on the consent calendar. If it's on the consent calendar, it means it's a waste of time, don't bother looking at it. And the problem is they're almost unreadable because of all these funds that go on. And we have to reauthorize, we have to change stuff. It's just a round-robin game that shows nothing. We don't need to be doing that. I know a lot of cities do it, I know a lot of public sector agencies do it. Again, they have different reasons for doing it, but we're not required to do it from a statutory standpoint. We're doing it to our disadvantage. It's costing us a lot. And these monthly reports we get must cost us a huge amount of time to prepare, and they're almost, I mean, really, ask yourselves, when's the last time you really looked in detail at these reports? It's just not the way to be doing good financial reporting. And I think these changes are essential. They must be done soon. We have to simplify. Susan suggests maybe we have 5 funds. I think we could get it down to 3 funds or something, but it doesn't matter. What we've got is, what, 15 funds right now? It's too many. And I don't wanna redo the whole budget. The budget's already in these 15 funds, fine, but they are just a waste of human time, both for the board, and they're a waste of human time in an accounting standpoint, because we're continuing to account for things on this basis. I just think this has a very high degree of urgency. I think it's something that the board should take responsibility for. This isn't what the staff wants to do. This is what the board wants to do, because the staff doesn't use these accounts for anything. The chief's not authorized to go spend out of different accounts, which is what happens in some organizations. There's nothing that the chief gets out of this. There's nothing that anybody else gets out of it. All we're doing is wasting people's time, and I think it's just absolutely foolish, and we're making it impossible to read. I mean, I think this is really critical, and it needs to be done quickly. So I'm not disagreeing with waiting and letting an administrative services person look at it. That's fine. But this is not something that should wait a year. We will spend so much time and effort, and it prohibits us from doing our job. That's the real problem. It prohibits us from having good financial oversight, because it's unreadable the way it is. You have to add all these things to figure out how much money you really have and where is it. Anyway, I don't know. Sorry to spend so much time, but I just think that, yeah, I just don't think it's changing the chart of accounts. That's.
Well, I think I would just fundamentally disagree, because every reserve, every fund you talk about is a line item in our current chart of accounts. I mean, I'm not sure.
I don't believe it's a line item, but maybe.
Oh, that's the way it comes out.
Yeah, but each one of these has to have line items. In other words,
That's right.
each one of these has to have its own line item.
That's right.
So
And that's
somehow,
why our current chart of accounts reflects the fact that we have all these different things.
but if
And
we
if
stop, we could stop using them, for
Yeah,
example.
but I mean,
No,
I
you
think
can't-
some of the recommendations
look
could
at-
collapse
Yeah,
those,
phase
right?
look at Susan's report. Phase out the internal funds during the
Exactly.
2014 fiscal year.
To collapse some of
That's
these.
precisely what I'm talking about, is,
Yeah.
okay, during the 2014-15 year, we will phase out the internal service funds. That's a recommendation I'm perfectly comfortable with. The budget process should be modified and streamlined. Again, I think that's very appropriate. I look at all of these recommendations, and I'm very comfortable with all of them. But I don't see that any of them say that tonight we need to make this change or that change.
I agree.
And I also think that we would be wise to look at, excuse the expression, the chart of accounts, because that's in fact the way the accountants look at it, and that's the way we should be looking at it, which is, how do you organize your revenues, and how do you organize your expenditures, and how do you organize your cash flow in a way in which the reports are in fact understandable and readable. And if you look at the New York report, it's designed to allow boards like ours to function better. That's precisely what the focus of it is. And to allow citizens to better understand where their money's going. So we don't have to pay anybody to give us the starting point. We may want to change it, but I would much rather start with that than just, we have two choices. We can take this very botched up thing we've got, which I think Susan's done a good job of telling us how botched up it is, and we can try to start putting pieces of tape over this piece and this piece and this piece, or we can say, no, let's start with something fresh and figure out a way to make transition from what we've got to something which is organized from day one to be done quarterly.
And this is gonna be, I think it's gonna be a pretty big overhaul. I don't think it's gonna be as simple as you think it is, Chuck. And we have to deal with reserve issues. I mean, even last year at the CSDA conference, there was a whole breakout session on reserves. I mean, dealing with the internal service funds, you know, Susan's got some great recommendations. I just don't think that we can make those decisions tonight. I think it's gonna take a longer time than you think. You have to, I do think the reserves issue is something to worry about, and we're gonna have to collapse, like I said, some of these internal services or consolidate or whatever. I just think they're gonna take time, and I definitely want the new administrative services manager's input. I think it's crucial. She's got he's got to work with this. I mean, this person's basically going to be like the chief operating officer to a certain extent. And to exclude her or him is going to be a detriment to us, I think.
Do we have a motion to table this then?
Then I'll make one.
Well,
I
just need to give them guidance. I mean, I'm not sure what.
Good new guidance, I mean, I don't know what.
I would, where we're
I
at.
think the staff is looking for direction that, A, number one, you agree with moving forward to make some, if not all, of the changes that are outlined, and that you indicate to the chief that when he has a new administrative services manager, which will be next week, that this be assigned to that person, and, can come back and work with either the full board or the finance committee on on implementation of the various recommendations. They don't all have to be done at the same time. There are some of them that should be done sooner than others.
Well, either way, I think that the new administrative services manager should be involved.
It's going to have to be by definition.
Yeah.
It's gonna be her job.
Yeah, exactly. So how much time do you think this person will need? Should we put this up for June?
I would recommend that you not set a target at this
Okay.
point. I mean, the chief is hearing this, that
Yeah.
when the new manager comes on board, I mean, I can guarantee, looking back to when I started last summer, she's gonna need a chance to get up to speed on a great number of things, not, she shouldn't just have this thrown in her lap the first day.
Fix it.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
We run out of the office.
We don't want that either.
that's right. So, I'm sorry, the staff can come back to you and say, here's the schedule.
Okay, I think that's fine. I mean, you're the other person on the finance committee. What do you think? Just having the
I think
staff
that's
coming
great.
back to us.
As I said, in my opinion, every single recommendation Susan makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we should move forward on it, but I would hope that we don't do it in an ad hoc basis. I would encourage us to look at the alternative of doing it as a part of restructuring the whole process.
Yeah.
And some of the comments she makes in here calls for a revision of the budget process. And I know I just sent it out today, you probably haven't had a chance to read it, but if you just read through this New York document, I think it's a great start.
Well, again, that's great to have for the discussion, but I still think we need this new person. So I think the direction would be just to let us know when we should start these conversations with her.
Chuck, you got a comment?
Well, I'm gonna risk one being a little too glib and maybe being a little obnoxious about this, but I'm agreeing that we should involve the manager, and I think the lane, and it's fine, we're not gonna decide tonight, but to put it in perspective, I wanna tell you that if I were hired as a consultant to do this, my expectation is that you could figure out the issues and a couple of alternatives in one 3 or 4 hour meeting, and in the second meeting of a couple hours, you could resolve everything. I'm just trying to put it into perspective. I don't think it's as big a task as we're making it out to be, and there are decisions to be made, that's for sure, and some things have to come back to the board, but I just am trying to dimension it as a problem for the board to consider, that this is not something that is hundreds of hours of time or anything like that, but that's all.
I don't know how long it's gonna take, but the point is that whenever this new administrative services manager comes in, that we gotta include this person. So however long it takes is however long it takes, but we can't start these discussions without her, I don't think.
The other thing I would take advantage of, because we're not going to have the opportunity again, is I would like to take this opportunity to thank Susan for an incredible
Yes.
job you've done.
Not just on this report, Susan, just overall.
You know,
I mean, just from the administrative chief operating perspective.
you have been a godsend.
Yeah, you really have been. Certainly helped the
I've
finance
enjoyed
and
the
HR
time.
committees.
All of it?
Pretty much.
I'd like to thank you too.
Great job.
Are you going to stay in the area, or do you have any?
Oh, I live here. I mean, I live, not here, I live in San Jose. I'm around.
Thank you.
You may see her again in a different
No.
position.
All right, so the direction would be just to have y'all come back and let us know when.
Direction is when you get your new person on board,
Let us know when
Right.
you're
do
doing.
that, and let us know when it's time to
We'll
go
let
back.
you know.
Don't throw it at her so that
Don't
she
worry.
runs out of the office.
Well, I
With
mean,
her
I'm
arms
sure
in
she
the air.
probably knows a little bit about the problem.
Okay, that brings us to comment,
She's already the board.
public comment number 3. Geez, Linda, you got anything you want to say? Jack Stokes, I'm speechless.
About what?
That's a
That's
direct quote from one of them.
Oh,
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
He's gone.
Remind you that we had a discussion before at the last special board meeting about reconfiguring some of our committee meetings. And we had decided that we could kind of put some, our committee meetings on hold a little bit for now. I think that that's not a bad idea, because we have some scheduled. I'm not opposed to putting them on hold, except for one. I would like to still have the finance committee meeting on the 12th.
To discuss this issue?
Discuss it.
To discuss whatever's on their plate. If this issue comes up, or that's on their agenda, yes.
I'm trying to understand why you're recommending that the finance committee meet.
Well, because I think, just part of being fiscally responsible, things that come up, and we're getting started in the budget process.
Yeah, the budget items are what would be coming on the 12th.
Yeah, so I think that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'd also like to, I think that's nice to have an opportunity for the new administrative services manager to introduce herself and for her to talk about her background. Something similar was done when I came on board as the HR manager with the HR committee. It's a nice opportunity.
I was just gonna say that, Ginny.
So, I wanted to just add one thing. I think that we've told the finance committee that they should be our audit committee as well, that they're fiscally responsible. It seems to me if we're not going to have committee meetings in the future, I would recommend that we nominate the 2 members of the current finance committee as the audit committee on an ongoing basis, so that we're sure that we have a designated audit committee, which we're required to have.
I think part of the discussion we had at the April 10th meeting was to have a special meeting or a study session on how are we going to reconfigure some of these committees that we have now, to cut them down in size, and who's on them, and how often, and who, what do we do? So I think that's a good suggestion, but I'd like to have that during that discussion then, so that when we're done with it, we come out with something that we can make a recommendation and implement.
Yeah, you're just making a month-by-month determination.
Yeah.
Until we have that discussion.
Yeah.
This isn't a permanent.
No,
Decision.
but the finance, because there are budget items on there, I think it's important to have that, not cancel it.
I agree,
Okay, we'll do it.
but I'd be willing.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I'd be willing to cancel the HR.
And you, for most of us, is we don't have a whole lot going on, and there's not a whole lot going on because
Emergency.
in emergency preparedness, we don't have a whole lot going on there, and we want to reconfigure that anyway, so. With that,
So basically, just to confirm, we're canceling all of the May committee meetings except finance, is that correct?
right,
And it'll be on the 12th
Right,
yes.
at 9:45.
yes.
And then I will get together with the chief, and we'll see if we can try and get a special meeting put together to look at those committees and reconfigure them sometime soon. I don't want to OD us on meetings.
Can I just ask Susan a question? Can the audit committee be appointed by the chairperson? Or does it have to be elected by everyone?
The statement of auditing standards says it has to be the full board that designates who acts as the auditor.
Okay. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Back into closed session.
Still.
Right.
Back into closed
So
session.
now we go 2 minutes. Well, maybe 3, depending how far I have to walk.
Yeah.
No, you can stay for the closed
I
session.
might as well be here again.
Can we turn off the tape?
So back here at,
I would say,
It's still really. 9:50.
We got cake, everybody, cake.
am I gonna get to the rest
You gotta give me a line.
Sorry. Every piece of wisdom you can ever possibly have, I've got.
that's fine.
Yeah, look at that little